not even allowed to rip the toilet roll. So you have to rip the toilet roll before the sun goes down so that you have toilet roll for when you need the toilet. It's I did not know that. Half of the kitchen is for dairy, the other half is for meat. Kosher food's really important. We had to be mindful of what we were bringing into their house. Amazing, amazing.
Are there just sort of logistical challenges with filming Sleeping Over, Alice? Presumably there are.
Yes, there's definitely logistical challenges. Where Stacey's going to sleep is always a big question, which always provides certain challenges. Some of them are quite fun to work out. Like last year, she stayed with the polyamorous family had a 2-bedroom flat. So Stacey had to sleep on the sofa downstairs next to the PD, who was in an airbed next to a pig and a dog.
Next to the pig.
And a cat next to the kitchen. So that was quite fun. And then I went off to the hotel and I was like, see you later.
Yeah.
But so there's a sort of sleeping arrangements, and but also there's the kind of challenges of how you fill a whole episode in 72 hours. That's always a challenge. Are we going to have enough content? And then also sort of keeping them on board for the whole weekend while also challenging. That's a challenge. Yeah. Stacey always manages that very, very well.
Is it just single camera?
There's one primary PD shooting PD, and then we have someone else doing second camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you filming during lockdown for this series?
Yeah.
How was that?
Do you want to answer that, Stacey?
Yeah. We were allowed. We had to wait. Everything was postponed, and then we had to wait until we got the green light for obvious reasons. And then when TV production got back up and running, we were raring to go. I mean, one that wasn't very difficult, one location really lent itself to these kinds of conditions was our eco warrior family. So they had, a real working relationship with Extinction Rebellion, and ultimately they are. They're trying to save the planet. Very privileged family, they own a Scottish island. So we had the whole island, and everyone's tested, and we're all masked up, and all the crew have taken the necessary precautions. So we had a whole island to ourselves. So that was much easier. But when there are kids involved and numerous family members, everything had to be sort of really quite regimented, and only certain people are allowed in the house at a certain time, etc. Yeah.
So going back to the issue of how much you feel you can challenge these people, do you have an idea in your head going in of the stuff that you want to say, or do you try and keep it a bit looser and just see where it goes?
Probably a bit of both. So, because like Alice just touched on there, we've only got the weekend. You'll know that you've only got the weekend to get an hour's documentary. So you're really up against it from the get-go. So you have an idea of what kinds of topics you're hoping to explore. But then I really love following the actuality as it sort of plays out. So we have a script, and then we sort of use the script for about an hour or two, and then it goes out the window, and then we go back to it on the Sunday and think, right, have we covered everything? Something like, we did an episode looking at a lad who had two lions and a puma, and obvious concerns there in terms of animal welfare, and kind of glamorizing owning these wild cats when you live off the M1. So you have to ask those questions, absolutely. But I think, again, I think as long as you're honest about that, on the whole, that they're willing to have the conversation.
How were the big cats?
Beautiful, really beautiful. And that's a good example of me feeling really confused when you're there, because to me, instinctively, it feels wrong, and I don't think there should be in a cage off the M1, obviously. But he has his reasons, and again, you have to listen and think about whether or not this is a conversation worth exploring. And I think, Tiger King was so successful, and Joe Exotic he behaved despicably, but people found him really charismatic. So what is it about these individuals who are drawn to owning wild cats?
Yeah, and what's the lady's name? Carol Baskin.
That's it.
No, I love that woman. I mean, well, actually, no, it's more complicated than just loving her. So, I don't know. I definitely have feelings about her.
Did you see her dance on Dancing with the Stars?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I mean, I'm a fan. I try and watch everything she does. Alice, when it gets a bit awkward, is that quite good for you from the program maker point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, absolutely. We sort of love a bit of awkward tension. Yeah.
And do you try and sort of push that, or are you happy that it's just going to emerge?
Well, I think you always go in there thinking about the difficult questions you want to ask people. And when we're sort of having conversations with them beforehand about taking part, we do sort of say to them, Stacey's going to ask you these challenging questions. We'll come in and ask you these challenging questions. But it's, I mean, yeah, it's definitely sort of something that we would like to try and do in every episode. I would say possibly this series is tonally perhaps slightly warmer than the first series. Would you say that in terms of sort of some of the story?
I mean, some of the topics we didn't need to challenge. I mean, some of them were really interesting families that we don't hear from a lot of the time. I felt really lucky. We film in episode 5 with an Orthodox Jewish family. That access felt so privileged, because we know anti-Semitism has been a huge, consistent problem. And I don't think we really get to hear from rabbis, for example, what is life like day to day. And the fact that family allowed us in, and he said to me, you can ask me anything you like, that's why we've opened the door. So that was just learning about, what it means to be part of the Jewish community. And I learn't loads. I learned so much. And actually we couldn't film for a lot of the weekends.
I was going to say, because of Sabbath, right?
Yeah. So you're not even allowed to rip the toilet roll. So you have to rip the toilet roll before the sun goes down, so that you have toilet roll for when you need the toilet. I did not know that. Half of the kitchen is for dairy, the other half is for meat. Kosher food's really important. We had to be mindful of what we were bringing into their house. Amazing.
So what's the process then with finding these fascinating families, Alice? Do you draw up a list of the kind of characters that might work and then go and look for them, or do you kind of come across these families and then sort of reverse engineer it, if you see what I mean?
It's I think it's a bit of both. We have sort of discussions between Stacey and W and the production team about the kind of types of family that we're looking for, and then it's a case of you sort of come up with this. It would be interesting to explore an Orthodox Jewish family, for example. And then it's a case of casting, which involves a whole number of different ways of doing it, whether it's lots of phone bashing, lots of, looking at through newspaper articles, talking to, different religious organizations, all the kind of typical casting, the ways that you would cast. For me, it involved a bit of going to sort of Stamford Hill and going to Jewish bakeries, for example, talking to people that way. So there's lots of different ways of finding people. Somebody like Reese, who was the person with the lion, he'd been in the news, so he kind of caught our eye that way. So,
and do you have a kind of wish list of the kind of people that you want to spend time with, Stace?
I was really keen to spend time with a Jewish family, just because I don't feel like we hear from families like that enough, and I think it's really important to, when anti-Semitism is this persistent problem. So Mordecai was the rabbi and his wife, and they had loads of children, and they were all just a dream. They were just wicked. And I really want people to just understand that, of course, these are just ordinary families with ordinary problems like everybody else. It's worth saying as well, though, although the sort of awkwardness is important in some situations, we really are. We think that we're trying not to sensationalize, and if we come across a family that would be brilliant television but we have concerns, we do dodge them. Like, we were thinking about a family, the parents were really involved with OnlyFans, but
Right.
they also had young children who were at school, and so we really had to think for a long while whether or not, you know, it was sort of ethically right, because we didn't want their children getting hassle from school, etc. And in the end, we decided to swerve it, because, you know, we wanted to make sure that the kids weren't getting any judgment from their pals and their peers at school. So whilst we want sort of bombastic characters, we also take it really seriously.